Gur Magath Cian Corla. The bill, when it comes to termination on the grounds proposed, which are race, gender, disability, the bill clearly makes that an offence, carrying a prison sentence of up to 14 years. And it does so by saying that the starting position of the bill is that it is an offence to procure, to aid. It's a very wide-ranging group of offences, except in the following circumstances. And none of those circumstances include race, disability, gender, or anything else to do with the condition of the fetus. So for after 12 weeks, were anyone to try to seek a termination or be involved in any way in a termination on the grounds set out here in this amendment around disability or race or gender or anything else other than very clearly what's in the legislation, which is fatal fetal abnormality, risk to the life of the mother, a serious risk to the health of the mother. Anything except for that carries a potential prison sentence of 14 years. That's what the bill says. So the bill couldn't be stronger in terms of disallowing terminations on grounds of disability. Now, there is a counter-argument made, contained within this, which says not before 12 weeks. Before 12 weeks, it doesn't say that. And so theoretically, a woman could get a screening and could decide that she is going to have an abortion on those grounds. So let's just think that through for a second. So the figures used for China and Pakistan and India were a cultural situation whereby terminations are sometimes sought, outrageously, but sometimes sought, if the data is correct, where the fetus is a girl.
There's no evidence for that, actually.
Okay, well, that's the allegation being made that I'm responding to. Now, so let's play this out. What would happen were we to pass this amendment is that if there were a screening on gender, the law would now say something like, you can have a termination if the fetus is male, but you can't if the fetus is female, essentially. That would be the implication. If there was a screening in terms of disability, what the law would then say is, if the fetus is deemed to be healthy, you can terminate the pregnancy. If the fetus is deemed to have a disability, you cannot. Now, so that's what would actually happen. Now let's talk about race. So what would happen is, if you were able to screen for the race of the fetus, we would have some situation whereby, well, if the fetus is of the following race or races, you are allowed to have a termination. But if the fetus is of the following races, you're not allowed to have a termination. So I think there are people who passionately believe in the protection of life during pregnancy and passionately believe in this, and I'm not casting aspersions on anybody here. I do think the assertion that the bill allows for termination in all of these grounds, I think that is incorrect. I think the bill couldn't be stronger in disallowing it. And in fact, doctors I've spoken to about amendments like this, they've said, look, we get this. This is very clear. The bill says termination is not allowed except in the following 4 areas, the following 4 sections. We understand that, it's clear. And they've said the moment you start introducing a grey area and said, well, it's these 4 areas, and by the way, there's a hierarchy now. They've said, well, you know, which gender? Which disabilities? Is it Downs? Is it intellectual disability? Is it physical disability? What is it? What? And they've said, look, this starts making life very, very grey. This starts making the legislation very confusing. And in fact, several have said, in their view, it weakens protections in terms of not allowing termination on grounds of disability, because now there's a conversation about, well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. It depends on the disability. But ultimately, we cannot live in a world whereby any woman would ever be in a situation at before 12 weeks where she's told, well, you can have a termination if it's one gender but not the other. You can have a termination if the fetus is healthy but not if it's unhealthy. You can have a termination if it is of the following races but not of this list of races. Like, that's just not something you could ever implement in our society. For that reason, I will be opposing the amendment, and I'm not suggesting for a second it's written or suggested that it's in a mischievous way, but the implications of it are profoundly bad in terms of what would actually be required to happen in reality were this amendment to be passed. I also believe, for those who do not believe that termination should ever be allowed in terms of disability and so forth, and I happen to agree with that, then actually this amendment would muddy the waters, and doctors have said that. They get it. The legislation is crystal clear at the moment. Termination is only allowed in the 4 categories laid out in the bill. And so my view on this is, regardless of which side one is on this or where one is in between, that the practical implementations of this amendment passing into law would be grotesque, and I think I really do think it should be well, ideally withdrawn, but certainly opposed. Thank you.